Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 30th of March. Henry, let's have some
Yeah.
discussion about camo proxy and Redis.
Hey, I guess Vlad will not join, so I will just tell a little bit about camo proxy. So basically, we set up the task that we think we need to do in the epic there, so we can have a look if you want. And what we did so far is mostly talking through how this is working with Vlad, right? How do we use our Kubernetes deployment repositories? How are the pipelines working and so on? So he was looking into that. And we also met with Craig Miskell, who originally set up camo proxy to just get some background on some of the decisions they made to get a better understanding. And so the good thing is camo proxy is straightforward. It's just a Go binary, right? So it's not really complicated. The only little thing that they additionally added to it is HA proxy because of rate limiting, or let's say of blacklisting. No, we say deny listing, sorry. And so this is a special thing. And how this is set up currently is in the same way how we do add blocked IPs to our other HA proxy deployments, which is this strange front-end security repository where there's a file where you can put in an IP, and then this will be read by chef locally and then deployed in the HA proxy config. And the same mechanism is working for camo proxy. And according to Craig, it was never used in the last 3 or 2 years that we had this. So this is an interesting feature which we need to think about how to rebuild this in Kubernetes, because it can't work automatically like this. But on the other hand, because we never used it, we think that maybe this can just be an afterthought, just get it out right now, and then think about how we can build something similar by, I don't know, just updating some kind of config map with an URL list of things that we need to block. That should be fairly easy enough, I think. We just need to adjust our runbooks then to this. But this means we also need to get an ingress in place, which can then take this value and block something. So that's the only thing. And yeah, the next step is we talked about how to deploy this. And we first thought we would go with Tanka, but then we decided to go with Helm files because most of our deployments are done with Helm. And so this is kind of our standard. And even if we don't have it in Omnibus right now or in our Helm charts, maybe we'll add it in the future. So having a Helm chart maybe isn't a bad idea. And maybe it's even simpler to get it started. But Tanka would also have been nice. But we made the decision for a Helm file right now. And Vlad is just about to work on that, creating the Helm chart for camo proxy. Any questions so far to camo proxy?
As far as I know, we've been trying, or there's been a desire to transition everything inside of the GitLab Helm files repo into the Tanka deployments repository. Does that impact any decisions?
Okay. No, because Tanka can just read Helm files. So if we should decide to go with Tanka, we can still use the Helm chart and just tell Tanka read the Helm chart, right?
Okay.
So I don't have an opinion on that. I also didn't notice that we decided that we migrate this over to Tanka. So
that's from memory.
I think it was raised. I don't think it's been like fully decided. Like I think we should probably review what that would actually mean. I know there was an issue that did this, or it was a suggestion in amongst an issue. There are definitely some downsides. So there are some positives, but there are also some downsides, right? Which is that it's all new. Like everyone will have to learn JSON, right? Which is not trivial. So I think keeping things close to the Helm chart for now will make it, especially if it's a simpler migration, right?
Yeah, I think that's the simplest step, and that can be, taken forward to Tanka or anywhere else if needed. So I think we are not blocking ourselves going with Helm chart for now.
If I remember correctly, Skabek, that was in one of the many discussions around what we do with k8s workloads. Is that correct? Like the blocking nature? Yeah. Okay. Because that's an epic which I think we should get set up and sort of be able to evaluate, because I don't think it's going to be a small change to kind of resolve this, but I do think we need to get it resolved in the next sort of couple of quarters. So if there's a way like we can contribute to, or if we have an epic already, or if we can contribute to an epic to get a project set up so that we can actually resolve that state, would be great.
I agree. Like at this point, both of these repos do effectively the same thing, just in different ways. So it's just a matter of tackling the tech debt and ridding at least one of them.
Yeah.
The transition will be the part that takes the longest, just because we have so much in the GitLab Helm Files repo.
So are we using Helm file or kind of pure Helm?
We will create a Helm chart for that one. And this will be, the idea was to put this into the Helm files repository to get it deployed. And the question was if we can just also put it over to the Tanker deployments repository. But if we have a Helm chart, then it shouldn't be hard to bring it over there, if that is the future. But I am not sure about that one right now.
Step one is to get at least the Helm chart going. You know, we still, because of that, we still have time to revisit that decision and make changes as necessary. So I'm less concerned about that at the moment.
Yeah, so we will go with that. Anything else to KMO proxy? Okay.
I have one point. I think I've already mentioned to you in private, Henry. One of the things that I've run into a few times with KMO proxy is the logging is not great.
Yeah.
And that if we have capacity, improving that side of things while we're touching KMO proxy might be something worth looking at.
I think we didn't update KMO proxy since a long time, and I think it shouldn't be hard to just choose the newest version of KMO proxy when we deploy. And if we get improved logging with that, I mean, you have some PRs for that open still, right?
Yeah, there's one merged about a year ago that would already help quite a bit. But the main thing that's still missing is there's no correlation ID, and they're like separate log lines. So like we get the request and we get the response, but we don't know which one belongs to which.
Yeah, makes it not easy. But yeah, I mean, here the question is just to get the newest version deployed, right? And I don't see big changes in, in the functionality that should break anything. So we can just take the newest version and hope that we get as many log improvements included as we can, and then it shouldn't be hard to improve that. And if you have time, I don't know, maybe Vlad wants to look into improving that even, you can see.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, so Vlad's around until sort of beginning of June. So depending on how much time we have after the migration, like, you know, we could certainly ask him to help with some of this stuff.
Cool. I'd be happy to coach on that as well.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Kiko.
That's cool. For Redis rate limit migration, so the current state there is that I'm right now working on the automation for our real environments. Like the first one is to switch the configuration over in a rolling fashion, like the same way like we did in our testing. Just we need to adjust this a little bit. I mean, most of it is already there, but we need to adjust it to how our clusters are set up and the naming conventions we have in our production and G-staging clusters. Currently working on that. I hope that should be working today or tomorrow, and then we can do the switch over. And I guess I will rework the CR for that you already created with a few adjustments. And the plan is to get this over into the runbooks repository, because right now most of the code is living in the sandbox testing repository, but that's really nice for testing, and it's tested there. And once it's working, we should have this in the runbooks repository, because this is which we will use in the future to run any kind of cluster config migrations. So that's the current state and plan. And tomorrow, Igor and I wanted to also do a pairing session on the whole thing.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I've also noted as kind of the milestone that this is working towards is sorry, you were saying, Henry?
I couldn't hear you. Sorry, maybe it was me or you.
Yeah, no, I thought, is it just me? Yeah, just partway through you go, we lost you. You're back now, though.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think my headphones are acting up. Yeah, so the next milestone that we're working towards is getting the host names setting rolled out to gprod, which we will need.
Awesome. So after we've got this on pre, is it then a case of just sort of the next step, just roll it through staging and production?
Yes, right. And for production, we would need a CR, of course, to do this. But then we should have the automation in place, so it's not a lot of steps inside of the CR. So it's not really that complicated once it works in pre and staging.
Awesome. Sounds good. If you need any approvals for those, just give me a ping.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. And then on point 4, I just wanted to mention, so I cancelled APAC demo, which was scheduled for tomorrow. Graham's out sick. So hopefully that's fine. Like, I think in the sort of next few months, that might be more difficult because I'm expecting Vlad will time better with that demo. So it might be more important on the camo proxy stuff, but I don't think there was anything planned for tomorrow's demo. So hopefully that's fine.
I think I have one more point, just wanted to add it. I think the chart bump still is blocked. I have the feeling that...
yeah, I can give you a quick update. So I chatted with Graham this morning. So there are a few bits that need to sort of be resolved. I believe Felipe and distribution are working on those. So it looks like there's a bug on the distribution side. So at the moment, I don't think we need to be involved. Like I'm not aware that anything is with us. Graham wasn't working actively on anything. So I can check in later today, but my expectation is, because it's linked to the whatever the
yeah, I just checked the state, and I think Gons is going out of office tomorrow or something like that, so he can't continue on that, and I didn't see who else will pick it up, so I was just wanted just to ask what the state here, but because also Joao already asked, oh, we will soon need to do a chart bump, and you said we are blocked. How long is it going? So he's also watching the EMEA, and yeah.
Awesome. I'll see what I can do about getting some updates. But yeah, my expectation at the moment is that Felipe and distribution are working on it. The main thing is the bug around the Petroni cluster.
There was that one, and there was also a monitoring potential change.
Felipe doesn't think that's going to be an issue, from what I understood of the Slack channel. So that bit looks like it might be fine.
Good.
But I'll get him to check it out. But I think there's just those two bits, which he seems to have a good handle on. So
excellent.
I'm hopeful that this will go through. Do you know, Henry, when registry does need to do the bump?
Let me check. I just saw a message today in the channel in the container registry. So yeah, we had one comment for testing and staging. I think they want to bump something. Yeah. Yeah, I think they're waiting for this one. This is for testing slow import, and they need to run the chart for that.
Okay, let me see what I can do about.
I guess they still also run other tests and fix bugs, but I guess they want to have it in the next days.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'll see what I can do to get an update on this one in the next few days. So I'll update today so we can get this unblocked in the next few days.
Yeah, cool. I mean, it's just it's good that we soon have this weekly update of charts, but these massive updates, and then unfortunately there was this really big change with the renaming of monitoring things. This is really making things hard. This is really
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I chatted with Graham a bit this morning, and I think there's probably a couple of things. Like it was once we have a more frequent, like a weekly update, then hopefully when we get something like an incident that needs a chart bump, the person doing that change will be able to just push something straight through to production and not get caught up in all these extra changes.
Yeah.
There may be a future thing though that we want to so the chart bump process is really different from our auto deploy process, because in an auto deploy process, like a developer makes a change, checks it as best they can, pushes it in. But if they have problems on the deployment, we just revert it straight out, right, and hand it back to them. The chart bump's a bit different in that we seem to be the ones ending up kind of like resolving things to make the change work. So I think we also want to look at that process and work with distribution to see how we can, well, not just distribution, but they're obviously making a lot of the changes, but work with the people who make the change so that if something's not expected, we actually get to hand it back to them.
So do we want to consider an auto deploy process such that anytime our Helm charts change, they get auto deployed just like the GitLab code base?
I think we probably do.
I enjoy the idea,
right?
But we've got a few things that are going to conflict with each other that we need to work out in order to enable this.
Yeah, I think we should aim for that though. Surely, I don't know, actually, you might have a thought on this. Is there a too many chart bumps problem? Like if this was continuous deployment, would that be painful for people using the chart?
I don't have a gauge for how often they are merging changes into the Helm chart. So there could potentially be that situation. But if we could set it up like we do with auto deploy, I would probably encourage it to be like its own auto deploy process, just because it's more of a configuration change than like the GitLab software being updated.
Okay, yeah.
So I think like if we carry that
platform.
Yeah, I think if we carried our auto deploy process as a separate entity to target just the help chart, that could be kind of interesting, because then we're still grouping multiple changes into one deployment.
So something similar to what Gitaly does in a sense, right? Where they cut their own gems, right? And we just
effectively, yeah. But on the other hand, we could continuously deploy. That way, anytime they merge to their default branch, we're kicking off a pipeline for that change.
Yeah.
But I think they have a lot of MRs coming in all the time, and I think we would fully make our deployment pipelines too full with chart bumps then, and would need to wait a long time until they are through.
That's my fear.
That wouldn't leave any time for config changes and auto deploys then anymore.
Exactly.
So I think we really need to do it in some kind of intervals, daily or something like that. Maybe.
So the batch size is already maybe too large for like continuous deployment.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
It's worth a conversation though. So like this is totally something that we should maybe start considering at some point in time. But I think what Graham has started is a great intro to us learning how bad this is potentially going to be for us.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think it fits a little bit on the sort of the auto deploy journey, right? Like make them more frequent so they become a bit more predictable. Maybe we get to daily chart bumps, and then how can we actually automate the whole thing?
And realistically, we really need to figure out a way to enable auto deploys, chart bumps, and configuration changes to get kind of queued up in a way. That way we're not running on top of each other when we have other
Exactly.
changes that we need to make. Because
Exactly.
stuff
Yeah.
like the container registry, when we start auto deploying that, and what's the other one that we wanted to start on? KAS.
Has. Yeah.
So like all of these are going to start running into large issues because we're just going to get bottled up with this one repo is going to become a bottleneck at some point in time. And we need to
Exactly.
figure out how to address that without impacting people negatively.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you have a feel for, so we've got a few kind of, there's sort of similar but different problems. So we have the sort of the blockingness of k8s workloads, so the kind of pushing application changes and config changes in the same pipeline. We have the chart bumps needing to become auto deploys. And then we have things like registry, the kind of the pain we see with particularly registry at the moment because they're actively developing, but like doing the manual bumps. In terms of those projects, like what would be your kind of preference on which is the most painful problem right now?
Chart bumps. Chart bumps are super heavy and hard to predict what is breaking, because just from the Helm diffs, you can't really determine what will happen. You need to check and understand what's going on when this is generating a Kubernetes object. And so this is really always feels like a big risk, and it's really hard to review.
Just looking at the diff itself is super painful on top of needing to investigate an individual change. If the diffs were not a couple thousand lines long, it would be slightly less painful.
Yeah. Yeah. So like if we just did these more frequently, the pain starts to reduce, right? Yeah.
To an extent. I think if we could figure out a way where, so there are certain changes that show up in the Helm diff during a chart bump that are very unnecessary. And I think we would need to work with distribution to figure out if there's a way to work around it. So one example of this is that the version gets bumped inside of the values of each of our charts, which for us, because we're trying to deploy the latest, we don't really care which version is running. I don't care that we went from 5.8.1 to 5.8.2 in our Helm charts, for example.
Yeah, right.
But every single Helm chart that's part of the GitLab com Helm chart sees that change. So it makes our diff a couple thousand lines long per deployment.
Yeah.
And that's across a lot of clusters. So just the sheer number of that showing up is kind of painful. If we could figure out a way, if that's able to be reduced, that would help us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is that one of those
could,
things we can configure to ignore, like that we had on that other issue?
That's what I'm suggesting. We need to work with distribution to figure out if it's possible, because I don't know what in our Helm charts is relying on that version number. And if we do have some reliance on it, then we might not be able to. So maybe we need to do some sort of development inside of our Helm chart to say, hey, use this version, or this is an auto deploy because of this thing. Act differently or something.
Right.
So we just need to work carefully with distribution to figure that kind of thing out.
Okay.
Because then we could focus on the next hard part, which is, hey, we see this Helm chart and now we see this awkward change that doesn't look familiar to us. Now we could spend more time investigating that versus spending the 30 minutes reviewing each cluster's diff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's the trade-off, right, of the making the bumps more frequent is, on one hand, hopefully you don't have so many things to review, but also you'll have to do a load more reviews. Cool. Okay, yeah, that would be. Okay. So I think it sounds like, so this is kind of interesting as we're thinking about kind of the future of delivery and sort of splitting into deliveries. We kind of have two problems that are run in parallel and maybe fit kind of with the sort of areas for splitting the team. One is the chart bumps, and the other, which is super painful for us in terms of like, I guess, in terms of on the clusters and actually how we get changes there. And the other one that's super painful is the k8s workloads blocking on the auto deploys. which is painful for release managers, even though it's just a retry. That's going to become more problematic when we get to the automated deployments, because the great thing about automated deployments is they'll just run and you don't need to watch them. But what we're going to see is a lot more unexpected failures, which will become they'll become more visible, right? Because you won't necessarily be watching the pipeline. So if something blocks or fails silently, it's much more likely it'll stick like that for a lot longer.
I think at some point to address that, or at least one of the options to address that, is we may need to consider splitting out our deployments. So like, for example, we could remove some of the blocking nature by ensuring the GitLab registry is deployed all by itself, because then it could run on a completely different schedule than anything else.
Yeah.
The problem with all of that, though, is the amount of shared secrets. We'd have to duplicate a lot of stuff, and that's quite unfortunate.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's good to know. Okay.
I think also one problem is that our deployments take pretty long already, because we have very big deployments, right? For API and web or Sidekick. This really takes a long time until a new stateful set is deployed there. And if we could reduce this time by splitting it up in some way, I don't know if that would make things too complex, but if we were able to just be faster instead of waiting half an hour until something gets deployed, then we could do it more often, right? Right now, we really can't do too many config changes and auto deploys and so on at the same time, because they take a long time, and then there's no gap in between where you could fit something in already.
Yeah.
If there would be a way to make this in smaller pieces and faster, that would be cool. Not sure what would be a good solution there, but splitting up in more clusters maybe, or something like that.
Are we already at the limit of how much we can do concurrently?
We do 2 clusters at a time concurrently. We do the diffs all in one job.
Within
all
so
the
within
diffs
a
happen
cluster
within one stage, and then like the deploy sends the manifest out for everything all at the same time to 2 clusters.
So API web and Git will be all rolling out in parallel.
Precisely. Yeah.
Got it.
So I think,
and even that is too slow, basically.
Well, like those take between 10 and 20 minutes per cluster. So it's not terrible. I think the majority of what takes the time is the just the rotation of the pods, because like Sidekick for some of our workloads, they run 170-ish pods. So rolling through all those just takes a decent enough time to not be concerned, but like it's something we can't easily control because it's Sidekick. We don't want to kill too many at the same time.
Could we increase the concurrency level on how many of those are
we probably could
rolled, like the roll window?
We probably could, yeah, because we've already modified it. We're straying away from the default so that we're spinning up more new pods before we start tearing some down. So maybe one option we could do is maybe ask Kubernetes to spin up a few more extra pods initially, and then we could start tear down a few more faster potentially. That's worth experimenting with, I think. I think that would still be a little bit difficult for Sidekick just due to the nature of how Sidekick works, especially for stuff like project imports and exports. That would be very dangerous for those particular workloads, but for everything else, I think that's a great option we could toy with. I'm sure there's other Sidekick workloads that fall into the category of we should not do it this way, but at least for like our web services and such, those are prime candidates for that exact solution.
In terms of pulling all this stuff apart and kind of getting this to become like projects that we can prioritize, it seems like this is quite tangled and difficult. Like, is that everyone else's sense that we have a lot of epics and issues Does everyone feel like this is like we don't necessarily have a clear set of projects that we can just prioritize for solving these?
I think we have a lot of ideas, and we haven't spent the time to focus on a given idea to make things better overall. Like, we've got a lot of tech that's spread throughout, but we've been concentrating our efforts on existing stuff or new stuff that keeps propping up. That's kind of like a P1, P2 kind of situation. I would love for us to, I don't know, everything kind of competes with each other. Like, the desire to make this one repo better doesn't help us for other projects, for example. But like, we've wanted to do that stuff for a really long time. But now this new thing that we're discussing here is coming up, and that might change the face of how we approach things. So I'm not really sure how to answer.
I was saying laying a foundation because I'm about to suggest something very non-GitLab, and before you all shout me down, I wanted to just check. How about we get a Google Doc set up and just start dropping this? Because I think one thing that's tricky around issues and epics is somebody gets to write a essay in a description and everybody else gets to comment in a different place. And I think that makes it really, really hard to actually pull it all together. I know you can do it in an MR, but it's still this, I think we're churning so much that it might be quicker just to do a first draft of dropping all of our thoughts in a doc, and actually sort like, what is the problem? Where are all the pieces? What do we have as ideas or pain points, or no particular structure necessarily needed, and see if we can start to piece these together into projects. Like the chart bumps feels like it's a distinct project, which is great. K8s workloads feels much more messy, and I know we have lots of epics that cover that, but there's probably some dependencies between these pieces as well. Awesome. Let's start that. I'll put one together and put some sort of context so that Graham can also have the context. And Igor, like, very, very welcome to also contribute in there. It's not a like delivery exclusive thing, right? Like, I will open it up. I'm sure Jav will have some thoughts, but with the sort of goal of how do we untangle these pieces that we all regularly work on, that we know are quite painful.
Amy, with that in mind, question regarding priorities. I noticed in our build board, we had the desire to rebuild a bunch of node pools because they're missing the appropriate labels. This was an epic that was spun up by Andrew, maybe almost a month ago at this point. I'm wondering if we should remove that from delivery and push that towards reliability. That way we in delivery could focus on the stuff that we just spoke about.
So we certainly can. It has been requested that delivery and scalability pick up some of the stuff, and it's nice to share. Like, not against anyone else doing it, but I know reliability have a lot of their own priorities to handle. So it is something that we should be working on kind of across delivery and scalability. However, having said that, I have it on the board as kind of like, if you want to pick up a small thing, there is something there. We probably don't want to just neglect all the kind of future thinking stuff. The board will actually run out of items relatively soon. Like, we should not neglect Q2, which is coming up fairly rapidly at the end of at the beginning of May. So don't feel like you have to always be picking issues and pushing them. Like, certainly I think for like everyone here, I expected a decent bit of your week is probably on kind of longer term thinking, setting up projects and kind of helping with this stuff. So it is going to be they will remain in delivery, but it's fine if they don't get picked up like right this minute. However, having said that, I mean, like at the moment, as I say, I don't think we have that many projects that are just ready to prioritize. I know we have lots of things kind of in progress. But in terms of, say, if Q2 started on Monday, I don't think we have 2 or 3 projects that are sort of just set up and ready to go. So we definitely do need to spend a bit of time getting there. Cool. Is that everything we've got for today?
I believe so.
Awesome. Nice. Thanks for the chats, everyone. That was actually super interesting.
Cool.
Cool.
Well, everyone have a lovely day.
Take care. Bye.